It's hard to imagine a world without the internet, as widespread and accessible as it is today, but in 1999, the internet was just a place to check your email and feed your Neopets. The rest of the day was for video games. The console wars had just started, and we'd all fallen headfirst into the Pokemon craze. They were even making a movie about it, and it was going to be in theaters just in time for my birthday. I had a big white brick of a Game Boy, but we didn't have any of the bigger video game consoles that all of our friends seemed to have. So it was a real treat whenever I can get my hands on a copy of Nintendo Power. Every month, this magazine picked 3 or 4 games to really go in depth about. And after a few pages highlighting all the best parts, you can get a pretty good idea of what it's like to play through it, even if you never get a chance to play it yourself. As a bonus, you can sagely tell everyone that Nintendo confirmed contact lenses are sold in Hyrule, even if you have no idea why that would even matter. And this is where I first learned about Harvest Moon 64. Now, for most games, you can immediately tell what kind of game it is. A shooter, a platformer, sports, puzzle, whatever. But I remember turning to this page and having no idea what I was even looking at. Each page had something new and unpredictable, and that made me want to play it even more. The cartoonish animals, the oversized vegetables, and several female characters ready to fall in love with you? I didn't even know they made games like that. The next time that my best friend invited me over, I made the request. His parents limited his screen time, and whenever I came over to visit, he would always donate what little time he had to me. I felt especially bad this time because Harvest Moon 64 is a single-player game, but we ended up having a lot of fun with it. He handed me the controls and told me everything I needed to know about running a farm. How to clear the rocks, and then plant and water the seeds, and, most importantly, how to make the blonde fall in love with you by talking to her over and over with the dog. I made it to about day 15 before his mom came in and declared that our screen time was over and we had to go outside. So we went to our usual hiding spot and pulled out our Game Boys to continue our screen time, all the while talking about Harvest Moon. There were seasons that changed, and the crops you could grow and the wild plants in the mountains changed with them. Each girl had different events and cutscenes, and you could get recipes from the villagers. I also learned about the photographs, the in-game collectibles for reaching certain milestones. In particular, there was a rumored 16th photo for playing the perfect game. He'd never gotten it, and it was so rare and the rules were so obscure that no one really knew if it even existed. Getting this photo is going to be on my bucket list for the next 20 years. Just before I entered high school, my parents finally caved and brought home a brand new Nintendo 64. The catch was that our game library was limited to whatever Blockbuster had on clearance, usually because they couldn't sell it to anyone else. We had all the classics, like Mia Hamm's Soccer 64, Razor Freestyle Scooter, Blues Brothers 2000, Beetle Adventure Racing, and we came to love these games just as much as our friends loved Mario Kart and Ocarina of Time. Harvest Moon 64 never showed up in that bargain bin, and believe me, I checked every single time. But eventually, there's a point where you have to accept the inevitable and move on with your life. That way, when it finally does show up at the most unexpected time, it only makes it that much better. In my case, it was Christmas Day 2005. I don't even remember any other gift I got that year, but I remember that feeling. Something so impossible that I'd given up on it a long time ago, and yet here it is, right in front of me, as real and possible as anything could be. My very own copy of Harvest Moon 64. And this time, I didn't have to share it. There was no screen time limit. I could play for as long as I wanted. Now, I'd have to wait a few days because my sisters got similar gifts and they'd want to play their games too. But that's okay because I had a lot of research to do. Now, the internet had come a long way since 1999, but blog posts and fan sites create this echo chamber of unfounded rumors. YouTube wasn't even a month old yet, and out of all of the Yahoo search results for Harvest Moon 64 strategy guides, Game FAQs seemed like the most reputable source, which tells you what my options were like. It would be another month before SCG drops his magnum opus, and another 5 years before Kirby Arm shows up, so my options were limited. In the end, I went with a guide written by Straw Hat because it had a day-by-day guide specifically for getting the perfect evaluation and the party photo. And after a few days of research and practice, I decided I was ready. On New Year's Eve 2005, I set out to play the perfect game according to every rumor I'd ever heard. Max affection for every villager, all recipes, a full coupon barn with all the best products, selling something every day, never getting sick. Even if only one guide mentioned it, it was on my list. I kept a backup save, and if anything was even remotely questionable, I restarted the entire day. In the end, I played for 21 hours straight. All night New Year's Eve and into the next morning, I attempted the perfect playthrough, down to the tiniest detail. In spring year 2, I noticed that I didn't have Ellen's recipe on my list in the kitchen, but talking to her triggers her death sequence, and there'd be no way to get the recipe after that. In writing this now, I'm almost positive that I did have the recipe, I just didn't recognize it. She calls it walnut cake when she gives it to you, but it appears as herb rice cake in the list in the kitchen. What's even more confusing is that Sydney's recipe also appears as herb rice cake. Now, if I'd done a little research, I might have found a post about it in the forums, but a reminder that we lived in a world where people truly believed that Mew lived under a pickup truck. So the only way to know for sure is to test it out on your own, and it was just too late for me to do that. Now, I probably could have made it work knowing what I do now, but at the time, I really couldn't see any viable solutions except deleting the file and starting over from the beginning. No power berries, basic tools, spring 3, year 1, here we go. And as the sun came up in real time, I was hitting my limit. After doing the same things over and over every single day, my hands were moving on their own. I started hallucinating and talking out loud to the characters on the screen. In a single blink, I would find myself on the other side of the map and no idea how I got there. It was about noon that my mom finally clued into what was going on, and I found out my screen time did have a limit, as she marched me back to my room to go to sleep. Even laying in bed, my fingers kept twitching the game inputs on a non-existent controller, and the game kept playing behind my closed eyes. But a few minutes later, I was already dreaming about Karen. I made a few more attempts over the next couple of years, but they never got quite as far as that first one did. When I went off to college, I left the N64 behind, so I had to sail the high seas to get my Harvest Moon fix. But the root problem was that it just took so much time, and working 2 jobs and college classes didn't leave me with a lot of time to work with. So I shelved Harvest Moon with the intention of coming back to it when my life was a bit more stable, with no way of knowing that time wouldn't come for another 10 years. In 2017, I was working as a freelance web developer in Seattle, which basically meant I was part-time unemployed. The dream was to get a foot in the door of one of the big tech companies, and I was sure I could do it if I could just get the interview. That was turning out to be the most difficult step in the entire process. But to make sure I'd be ready, every week I met up with a friend from high school, and we held a practice coding interview. He presented a problem, and I'd have to talk through the thought process and then write the code to solve it. And I came to really like this logistical problem-solving aspect, and I started looking for other problems to solve outside of our weekly meetups. And that's how I stumbled across speedrunning. Most classical games like tic-tac-toe and checkers were all solved a long time ago, but video games were much newer, and I found a website that preserved these old abandonware games and started going through them with the same 2 questions. What's the end goal, and what's the most efficient way to get there? Every week, I took a new game and just tore it apart. I looked for patterns, reverse engineering these basic DOS games, thinking, okay, if I'd programmed this, how would I have done it? And sometimes the best solution was just guessing the right answer, which is kind of boring. But more often than not, there was some kind of loophole or shortcut or a neat little trick that made it a lot more interesting. But the best part was when one of these submissions would reignite someone's long-lost interest in that game, and it was really neat to be the inspiration for people coming back to one of their passions. The first time this happened, I just submitted a new best time for a single run through Treasure Cove. Within a few days of me posting my proof of concept, Winslinator was right back in the forum asking how I knew exactly where to scan. And trying to sound smart, I wrote this giant post about randomization that I could have summed up in a single sentence. Basically, each level has a randomized set of animals in different locations, but only one of them has the specific item that you need. At first, it looked like each level was randomly generated, but after a bit of poking around, I found out the game wasn't randomizing each animal, it was randomly pulling an entire layout from a pre-approved list. And this meant that you could tell where every item was hidden based on the animals that appeared when the level started. Using this color-coded chart, Wins cut his best time in half, and when he finally got that perfect RNG run, it was a victory for all of us. The humans had finally prevailed against the machine. It made me realize just how much I enjoyed the community aspect, and it made it kind of hard to go back to the dead or empty forums that most of the DOS games had. The problem was that most people were on the console side of things, and to join them, I was going to need an upgrade. It took me a long time to get an N64 running on a 10-year-old MacBook, and even longer to find the right settings that let me play and record at the same time. But when I finally got it all up and running, the first game I loaded up was Harvest Moon 64. It was a very open-ended game for its time, so I was really curious to see what kind of goals the speedrunners used. Now, Speedruns Live had a couple of races for Get a Chicken and Livable Conditions, whatever that means, but the primary categories on speedrun.com were getting married to one of the eligible bachelorettes. When you broke it down to its components, it was about how quickly you could assemble the money, lumber, and affection requirements. It was predictable enough that you could map out a general day-by-day strategy, but randomized weather patterns made each game a little bit different, and every run told a different story. Out of the 5 girls, I picked Ellie because her path seemed the most complicated, and I figured that would make things more interesting. Her favorite item is eggs, so you have to factor in buying a chicken and keeping it alive on top of everything else you have to do. The standing record was 1 hour and 29 minutes, so that's what I set as my goal.
World record until TB plays it one more time.
My first submission was 1 hour 32, but by the end of the week, I brought it down to 1 hour 27. A few weeks later, while practicing for an official run, I got some really good fishing luck and decided to keep it going. I gave Rick weeds to prevent his cutscene with Anne, and I didn't get a single typhoon. But my luck finally caught up with me when Ellie won the Flower Festival. I had to settle for Anne, but I still managed to get an overall time of 124. And besides the Flower Festival, I really felt like that was about the fastest you could do it. So I gave myself a nice pat on the back, and I started looking for some new challenges, with no idea that I'd just woken up a sleeping giant. Demo returned to Harvest Moon 64 in October, and before the month was out, despite a soft lock and a reset, he took the record back, finishing in just under 1 hour and 23 minutes.
Yeah, I cut a week off on that. That was where the time save came.
It wasn't the first time that someone challenged one of my submissions, but it was the first time that I was inspired to answer it. This wasn't some random DOS game. This was a game that I loved, and somehow I'd found someone on the other end of the country who happened to share the same niche interests, and he wanted to play. Okay then, let's play. What I didn't know yet, what I couldn't have known yet, is that I was up against the god of RNG.
That's the thing. I'm a grinder too. I don't know if you ever played World of Warcraft. I played it quite a bit in my younger years, and I was like a notorious rep grinder.
It's not that he had better luck than the rest of us, but he knew that if there was any chance of something happening, no matter how small that chance was, all you had to do was keep trying over and over, and eventually you'd get the result you want. And that's what he did. After he passed my best time, he just kept on going, and a week later, he beat his own record by over a minute. The day after that, he took off another minute, and the day after that, he got the first sub 120 for an Ellie marriage run. By this point, he was streaming consistently, more than the rest of us combined, and whether or not he knew it, his streams had become the foundation of a Harvest Moon 64 community that was just starting to reawaken. Demo streams were a nightly meetup location and a safe haven for anyone interested in Harvest Moon, speedrunner or not. Through the winter of 2017 and into the next year, not only did he stream consistently, but he would pop in and cheer on anyone else who wanted to speed date their favorite girl. And each of us had a favorite, but Demo, he ruled them all. Demo's favorite was Anne, and we were never going to get that record from him, but we got pretty close with some of the others. Over a series of October streams, Soggy Duke improved his Maria time significantly, but he never quite reached Demo's 127. In November, Soggy and G. Hines went after Potpourri, and just before the new year, G. Hines finally bumped Demo down to second place. It lasted 12 days before the king was back on top. Before the end of the year, Desert and Angel Work both finished Karen runs within a minute of Demo's best time, and in February, Angel finally got one through.
Holy shit, dude!
The very next day, Demo dropped a 420 and took back the crown. That February, I got my own chance to wear the crown. Demo and I had been working together to build a customized calculator to keep track of all the money in lumber. It was his idea, and he did most of the heavy lifting. I just kinda stepped in whenever it broke. It was pretty basic, just a couple images you could click on and it would keep track of all of it for you. But it was a huge step forward from the methods I'd been using, because it's really easy to lose track when every day looks the same, especially when you start talking to chat and get distracted.
Come back in 30 minutes to see how the dog races go, but oh damn it, I didn't.
And when dropping a single day of foraging means 2 to 3 minutes of time save, it was a huge help, and I brought the LA time down to 118. The very next day, Demo held a marathon stream to beat my time, and 15 hours later, I handed the crown right back. And it was a little frustrating, but taking the gold from Demo for any amount of time was a badge of honor in itself.
I've said it before, but like anytime you see me playing Maria or Ellie, it's not because I like them. It's because someone else got the damn record.
That winter, I moved from Seattle to Hartford. So I wasn't as present in the community as I would have liked, but I don't think anyone could have predicted what would happen over the next couple of months. That Harvest Moon 64 was on the verge of a new era. and that my Ellie marriage run would be the last of its kind.
All right, most important question, Weebles. Yeah. When is Harvest Moon 64?
You know, soon. Soon TM.
Okay.
All
Trademark.
photos.
Thank
10 hours.
goodness.
To tell the next part of the story, we have to go back. Before I joined the community, before the first of the marriage runs, before the Harvest Moon speedrunning community even existed. Back to December 24 of 2014, the night of the Christmas miracle.
Yeah, I figured if I'm gonna get this done, I'm gonna need a Christmas miracle. There's no better time.
For as long as I've been part of the community, this single run sat alone in its own tab, a proof of concept just waiting for someone to challenge it. It was the first and only confirmed completion of collecting all the photos in a single playthrough.
Oh my god. Let's have a party together, dude.
It took about 9.5 hours total, not counting all the research and preparation that went into it. Not that it's hard to play a video game for 10 hours straight, some games are hard not to play for 10 hours straight. But this wasn't just 10 hours of gameplay, it was 10 hours of following strict guidelines and avoiding all the pitfalls that could make the completion impossible. And there were still so many things we didn't know about this game. Why certain things happened, or why they wouldn't.
Alright, ankle scene, let's see it. Okay, she's not here. You think that's possible because it's the fireworks celebration? Sam, does that also mean that I just cleared it? I wonder if that's the case, and I wonder if that's why I couldn't get it last time.
On paper, the requirements are simple enough, but in reality, the all photos run was a monster.
The last photo is so hard to get that, like, just getting it is an achievement in itself. Especially when you're getting all the photos before the evaluation period. That's, like, absurdly hard to do.
There's so many moving parts and different variables to keep track of, and if you're reading chat and playing by muscle memory, or just thinking about your next move instead of staying in the moment, it only takes a couple of seconds, just one wrong decision to permanently kill this run, and finding a way to beat it was going to take a group effort.
Between me and Odd Tom, we have a whole bunch of literature for all photos. I actually contacted Mr. Weebles, who is like the only one that we know of that's ever even completed the run, and he gave me a lot of stuff to work with too.
A lot of huge breakthroughs came during this time as we started pushing the boundaries and testing the limits. We found a Japanese YouTube channel from 2007 showcasing an assortment of glitches. Most of them were visual glitches or logical oversights by the developers, but in the midst of all of these videos, hidden in plain sight, was a video demonstrating how to get Potpourri's photo in a single day. And that was one less photo to worry about. The next month, Desert was playing around with a memory viewer and found an exception to the 1 affection boost per day rule. 60 goodbyes to May and you were best friends forever, and that's one less party gets to worry about. Not long after, while trying to break into people's houses during the Egg Festival, he found another neat glitch, and it wasn't long until we were all using it to make the ranch cutscenes faster. And this is about the time that Seifers showed up.
Thank you everybody who's been supporting me, watching me tonight.
Seifers on 5 specialized in the long haul runs, and after completing a 13-hour run in Harvest Moon Boy and Girl in January, he turned his attention to Harvest Moon 64. Now, Demo had some marriage runs to win back, and Cypher took this opportunity to interview our resident expert.
Yeah, Cypher, you pretty much nailed it. The only thing is that there's a hidden requirement for the blue feather, and that hidden requirement is that you need a kitchen. So we have to forage a lot more and chop a lot more lumber than we would otherwise.
We've been chopping stumps for lumber and foraging for money for so long that it was just the accepted way to do it. But Cypher suggested that it might be faster to sleep until winter, get the money with the hot springs work, and then use the betting glitch to win the lumber. And it was a bit counterintuitive to sleep through the entire year when you're trying to finish the task as quickly as possible.
I've done runs where I'll forage my money and then I'll go to the dog race and I'll use the betting glitch to get enough metals to buy the 500 lumber there, but it ends up being slower, like considerably slower, because you have to sleep all the way till winter.
And since none of us would try it, Cypher decided to do it himself. And if he hadn't been so new to the game, he would have easily taken the top time. After Cypher's proof of concept, Demo brought the Karen time down to just over 30 minutes.
So like, I've done 212 attempts of this, where like, I was doing like, mass fishing, like, trying everything in the book, and I just cut off 10 minutes with a new route. Like, this is absurd. This is an absurd route, and it's all luck based, and all that luck happens 25 minutes into the run. Out of a 30-minute run, 25 minutes into it is when your reset happens.
And we'd all wanted a way to complete these runs faster, but that was before we knew the price we'd have to pay for it. After putting in 30 minutes to an hour of progress, it would all come down to a random dice roll, and the odds were not in your favor. You either got a PB or you watched your run slowly die. That was now the reality of the marriage runs. It takes a special kind of person to keep going after all that. But that's what made Demo stand out. When most people gave up in frustration, Demo found a way to reframe it. Whether or not the dog race went his way, the stream was still successful as a community hangout. And by the end of the summer, every marriage run used the dog race strategy. The rest of us were busy researching for all photos, and there was still a lot of work to be done. None of us knew everything, but if we all worked together, we just might be able to pull it off. Each of us wanted to complete the all photos run at least once before the end of the year, and the only way that was going to happen is if we helped each other to get there. SCG's guide was a great place to start for data research, and we each took turns going through the document and double-checking everything, one number at a time. Although most of the all photos runs turned into data research anyway, teaching us fun new ways that the game can and would destroy your run.
Why did I read a book? Desert, you cursed me. I don't understand. I can reach her, right? I don't understand. Oh well.
Back then, every all photos attempt was a big event in the community because there were only two possible outcomes. Either it would fail spectacularly, or you would witness the first modern completion in real time, and it was going to be a good show either way.
Oh, that was really close, so if it's raining tomorrow, then the run would be instantly dead.
Now, I don't know how many attempts each of us made because we didn't keep track of it, and most of those streams have been lost to time. But I can tell you that my first run ended about 6 hours in. Not because the run died, but because I'd very much underestimated the amount of mental strain this thing puts you through, and I straight up burned out. I'm pretty sure I just pulled the Ethernet cable out of my laptop and then apologized for my internet going out. I know that one of my runs failed because typhoons kept me from shipping enough milks to win the cow festival, and that one of my runs failed because I ran past Anne on the farm and lost her photo forever. What I also know is that Seifer was the first of us to beat the machine. It was a classic case of the tortoise and the hare. While the rest of us were rushing through in a speedrunner state of mind, Seifer took his time. And it wasn't the fastest or the most efficient run, but it was rock steady. And 13 hours later, over twice as long as I'd gone before burning out, the one of us with the least experience with the game was the first of us to finish an all photos run.
How about you go live and I'll go ahead and raid you with my 2 viewers and you can get round 2 going.
Now, Demo and I both wanted to be the next to complete it, so we made a gentleman's agreement. The following day, we would start at exactly the same time, and as far as I'm aware, it was the first all photos race in the community's history.
It doesn't really even feel like a race to me, because it's such a long category that it's really like, who doesn't screw up? And then there's stuff like this that's out of both of our controls.
My run officially died about 2 hours before I realized I'd made the mistake when only 9 people showed up in my evaluation party.
I didn't do the Jeff glitch, and now that I'm married to Ellie, I don't think I can.
But I stuck around long enough to see Demo cruise on through to complete his first all photos run. It took him 9 hours and 29 minutes, which was only 5 minutes faster than Mr. Weebles. But Demo was about to get a taste of his own medicine, because Seifer finished 2 more all photo runs that week. The first one broke the 9-hour mark, and a few days later he swapped Lilia for Cliff as party guests and dropped another hour off his best time. It was the fastest I'd ever seen anyone bump from first place, and Seifer held it by a solid hour and a half. Demo swapped to Mary and Karen, and using the church members as party guests, he dropped his time to 8:43. On the same day, Desert finished his first all photos, coming in just over 9 hours, and that left me as the only one left who still hadn't completed a run. My turn would come on March 26th, in one of the best streaks of luck I've ever had.
7:40. That gives me 17 minutes to hit this record. I think I can do it. I need 1 grass, I need to sleep until the end. That'll be it.
We ran through the checklist during the 100 bathroom uses, but it was all done. All that was left was sleep till summer 1, 5 minutes for the evaluation, and we were finally gonna knock Seifer off the top.
Did I, Oh, jeez. That's, oh, that's not good at all. It's not gonna let me, yeah. Yeah, he was warped inside when my log terrace was finished. And he just wasn't fed because Karen did not feed him at all. Ellie would have fed him. Let's pull my second winner. Let's see where we are, what we're doing. We're on the 19th. It's the dog race. All right. We're gonna redo the dog race.
The real test of a player's skill in this game isn't how fast you can get all the photos, but how well you can stay on track when things start deviating from your plan and how quickly you can recover when things start going wrong. I didn't know what the penalties were for a chicken death or if it was even possible to recover from it in time for the evaluation, but Desert ran the numbers for me and we came up with a solid plan to play through the chicken funeral and finish the run anyway.
Hey, if you think I can make it, all right, I'll do it. I know Cliff is on the edge, I know Rick is on the edge, so -10. So that's 2 interactions with Rick, 2 with Cliff. Anne is at 200, so she'll stay above.
And with Desert's help, I was able to accomplish something I'd been trying to do since I was a teenager.
Yay, I beat a children's video game. Woohoo! Yeah, that's all there is to it.
You actually did it?
And it was just in time too, because my mom had just come in to ask why I would come all this way to visit her just to spend the whole time playing video games on my laptop.
I'm recovering from that. That would have been done like 30 minutes ago. Yes.
By the end of March, we'd each completed all photos at least once, but even our best runs couldn't touch Seifers 757. That bombshell would come on April 4th, as Desert skips the 8-hour milestone entirely, improving his time from 9:04 to 7:50. But there was an even bigger bombshell in store for us that month. One that would start with a single care and marriage run, but would end with a ruling that would test the strength of the Harvest Moon community. Every speedrunning community faces different and unique challenges as they grow, getting more popular or more competitive, but one challenge in particular is nearly universal for console games. An invisible line that runs through every community. 2 sides that work together and mutually respect each other, but they're 2 separate sides nonetheless. There are those that use the original hardware, and those that don't. Now, I'm not here to stoke the fires of the console versus emulator war, because it's just not worth my time. But we have to acknowledge that it's part of the community's history, whether we want it to be or not. For the purposes of the story, in the spring of 2018, my sister had our family's console, and somehow the price of the game had gone up over time. And without my MacBook setup, Harvest Moon speedrunning would be a hobby that I just couldn't afford. Thankfully, TBJ had gone through a long time ago and had published specific settings that would allow us to match up to an acceptable degree. Now, I had a MacBook, so I had to tweak my own settings, but it wasn't something I really paid a lot of attention to, because at the end of the day, I just wanted to play a game with my friends. But in March of 2018, Seifer was about to drop 3 consecutive all photos runs, one of which was beyond what anyone else could do at the time on a console. When Seifer submitted his first all photos run, the pause and unpause times were happening faster than the original hardware. Demo and Seifer talked about it in a private chat and they considered it sorted. So when his second attempt still had faster loading times, Demo once again confronted him about it, except that this time, the settings were all correct. He'd followed TBJ's guide as written, but the loading times still didn't match up. And the question now became, how do we address this? And how can we keep it from happening in the future? Demo brought me, Desert, and TBJ all together to get our thoughts about it. If the run was rejected, it would be the second time the only person who's been able to complete this run was denied a spot on the board due to a technicality. It's not even that he'd broken any rules, it's that following the rules hadn't led to the intended result. Now, different speedrunning communities have handled this problem in different ways, but most communities are hundreds strong by the time they reach this decision point. We were just 4 average people who specialized in where to find potpourri on a Friday. The VI refresh rate of Project 64 running through a virtual machine on a MacBook was a bit out of our depth. The discussion got beyond my understanding pretty quickly, but I believe the problem was that TBJ's guide was written for the English version, and Seifer was running on the Japanese version, which has different default settings. Whatever the problem was, TBJ identified it and rewrote the guide to address it. And the third time around, Seifer verified the settings and even showed them on stream before he started, just to cover his bases. And for the 3rd time in a row, Seifer got all 16 photos, this time in under 8 hours.
That was brutal, but I think we did it. I think we did it.
It was a huge milestone for the community, and there was only one problem with it. The load times were still faster than the console. But the rules didn't specify a requirement for load times, only what settings an emulator should be used. Seifer had done everything in his power to follow the rules, and to give credit where it's due, the mods let him keep it on the board. But there was a thick sense of unease about it, especially among certain console runners who thought the emulator gave him an unfair advantage. or that it wasn't a true world record because it wasn't done with original hardware. But even Demo didn't use original hardware, so where do you draw the line?
But I'm using my GameCube controller. So that's the only way I'm able to play this, because my N64 controllers are horrible.
Seifer was way ahead of the game when it came to NPC affection tracking. He was manually counting each individual NPC's affection, while the rest of us were using cutscene triggers and other less efficient means. But that didn't stop rumors that he was using a memory viewer off-screen or modifying the game code to skew events in his favor. And even Seifer and I weren't immune to it. We both had suspicions of the other at some point, but suspicions were all they ever were. And if anyone didn't like an emulator run at the top, they were just gonna have to beat it themselves.
Oh, I guess there's also the fact that I got everybody to 200 affection instead of 160. But that's just on me not tracking it properly.
And by the time I finished my first All Photos run at the end of March, the cracks were still there if you looked hard enough, but it felt like things were heading back to normal. Until April 2nd, when a single Karen marriage run ripped the wound wide open. Now, I don't think Gogo had any idea what he was getting himself into, nor do I think any of the events that followed were his fault. But on April 2nd, Gogo TBC submitted a Karen marriage run that claimed to be the world record time by 4 seconds. Gogo had cut off a significant amount of time by swapping a day of bridge work with watching Mana's cows. Unfortunately, he'd done it on an emulator, and the first thing the mods looked at was the loading times. When you set them side by side, Gogo's screen appears to load a lot faster, but the actual difference between the time you select sleep and the time you regain control of your character is somewhere between 30 and 50 milliseconds. And over 120 days, it adds up to somewhere between 3 and 5 seconds total. Gogo was using a faster route than the previously established one, but he was also less efficient because he was new to it. The resulting time difference from world record pace happened to be about the same as the emulator load difference, and the fairness of emulator runs flared back up in the group Discord, some claiming that the emulator users didn't deserve to be on the leaderboard at all, and the mods were forced to make an impossible decision. There was no practical way to verify emulator runs, and there weren't enough mods to realistically do it anyway. But banning emulator runs would alienate half the community's active runners, especially since emulator runners didn't have any representation among the moderators. The decision to hide emulator runs from the leaderboard remains by far the group's most controversial decision. As loyal to the original as it was, it also wasn't very well suited for a group the size of the Harvest Moon 64 community. And as attractive as the idea was to move us all to console in theory, the reality was a little bit different. You see, a Nintendo 64 isn't a very cheap investment, and as much as we also like the idea of using a separate and reliable CPU to run the game, dropping that kind of money just wasn't a realistic option for some of us. Now, the attempt to create consistency is laudable, but not giving an alternate option to those of us without access to a console was a massive oversight. The message they sent was that we would never be taken seriously here, not so long as we used an emulator. I had just finished my first All Photos run a few days before, and if you've watched the series, you know how much that means to me. So those of us who wanted to be taken seriously and didn't have access to a console, well, we left. A few days later, Demo reached out to me personally so he could buy me a console, complete with controller and Japanese cartridge. And this generosity is the only reason this isn't the end of my story. Moving from an emulator to a console was a truly weird experience because my muscle memory was bound to keyboard controls, and on console they'd all move to the opposite hand, and I kept having to stop and look down at the controller and figure out which button I was actually supposed to press, and it took a while to retrain my muscle memory.
I know, Demo makes this look so easy, and it probably is. I'm just not used to a controller. Again, out of shape.
The other big problem was that I didn't know Japanese, and I had no idea what anyone was saying. Most of the NPCs repeat their dialogue, so it's not a big deal, but the Japanese version uses fewer characters, and I had to learn a new rhythm to the dialogue boxes. And I'm embarrassed to say how many times I blew a run in the first minute, because the mayor's introduction has 3 dialogue boxes in English, but only 2 in Japanese. By the summer of 2018, Demo already had all the top marriage times, so he started letting the viewers vote on which marriage run they wanted to see today. Out of the 5 girls, the winner was usually All Photos, and Demo would have to explain, again, that he didn't want to stream for 10 hours straight. And we all knew it, but it was a fun community ritual, so we did it anyway. And every once in a while, he'd put together something special for us, like a horse race victory speedrun, or getting all the bachelors married off, really anything to get away from the marriage runs. He tossed around the idea of a glitchless marriage and individual photos, and we were trying to put together a Harvest Moon bingo, but it was surprisingly difficult to find enough goals of equal value, or ones we wouldn't immediately refuse if they ever did show up. Since Demo had bought me the console, I wanted to pay him back by giving him some competition again, like I did back with the LA Marriage runs. But Demo had left no room for error, and if I was going to beat any of his times, I was going to have to start taking it seriously, identifying my personal weaknesses, and do what I can to strengthen them. The language barrier was one of them, as was getting distracted and miscounting the number of times I slept. Some events only happen on a specific day, and if you sleep through it, if you miscount by even one, there's no going back.
I was just too busy focusing on Cliff, and it's just muscle memory to like walk back and then sleep. And I just wasn't thinking about Karen's photo.
If your chat gets rated and you're saying hello to everyone and, wait a second, was that sleep number 42 or 43? If you get it wrong, you're going to have to start over. And every time you pause to verify, you lose a little bit more time. And I have the kind of brain that bothers me every couple of minutes until I verify it. And if I could find a solution to that problem, it would be a huge weight off my shoulders. That summer, I was struggling to find a steady job, and I took whatever I could get for as long as they would have me. And that's how I found myself at a metal plant in Plainview, Connecticut. It was tedious, mindless work, but it gave me a lot of time to think. And this is where the idea for the routing program was born. We all had our own way of tracking what day it was, but I wanted a program that could display notes and reminders too. An improvement on our current tracking program, one that could track more variables with less user input. And every day, while I shaped these metal pieces over and over, I thought about a new feature I wanted to add, or a problem that had come up the night before. And every night I'd come home and add in the new code, maybe stumble across a new problem for tomorrow. And one day at a time, this program grew into something much bigger, much better than I'd ever imagined possible.
Well, the idea I started with is that at any point in any of these routes, if you drop in and you're given all the variables in that situation, there's going to be a best way to finish.
It did get complicated fast, and one of the challenges with adding new features was keeping the user interaction to a minimum.
What we're trying to do here is we want to fill in enough metals for 10 and 4 and 4 for all of them to equal the same number. So if you win the 10, or if you win the 4, or if you win the second 4, you should win the same number of metals.
The ultimate goal was to make it work for all photos, and I knew, even then, just how ridiculously impossible that was. But I wasn't about to give up on it without at least trying. But 2018 was turning into a black hole of failed all photos runs. One of us would go for it about once a month, but every single one of them fell short.
Oh, you just get the worst teammates. I can't believe I have to work with this. What is wrong with you? Oh, No, I'm not playing anymore. I'm not playing with you. This is wrong. This is sick. No, I'm leaving. I'm done.
There aren't many videos left of our failed attempts, but the one I remember most was when Demo pointed out that Kirby Arm's guide didn't specifically say that 10 guests were a requirement for the party photo, just the $24.94 global affection minimum. In 10 hours and 0 bathroom breaks later, after he ran an otherwise perfect all photos run, we found out that, yes, 10 party guests is a requirement for the party photo. In July, I got a job at the airport waving around little orange sticks. It was a steady job, and the bus line went straight to the airport, but it was a 30-minute ride on a good day. But it gave me plenty of time to work on the new program, and I even put together a tutorial for the new dog race strategy. By August, I got it working with Karen Marriage, and I tested it out on stream. Switching back and forth between two screens was a skill in itself that I'd have to practice, but it worked. I no longer had to scroll through notes or pause to check the day or money, and unless I did something out of the ordinary, all I had to do was click the sleep button every time I went to sleep. I still needed to work on trusting that past self did everything correctly, but that was more of a personal problem than a coding error.
It'll be the 19th, and I'm gonna check it real quick. Okay. Yeah, I'd rather check it and know for sure than to sleep right past the 30th.
Throughout August and into September, I started adding an all photos route to the program. The first 2 seasons took the longest because you have so many possible actions, but the goal wasn't to create an artificial intelligence to tell me what to do. It was to create a way to keep track of all the variables, if I was on track to meet their goal by their respective deadlines, and to remind me of special events in case I happened to be distracted at the wrong moment. I went through each season and made sure every requirement for every remaining photo was accounted for. When that was done, I added custom calculators for each season. How much money do we need in the mines in winter? How many milks have we shipped in year 2? And at some point, I stepped back and I realized my brain was tricking me. There was no need for all these little changes, but every time I sat down to do an all photos run, somehow I ended up working on the program instead. And it took me a while to realize what was happening, that I thought I was being productive, when in reality, I was using the program as an excuse to put off actually doing an all photos run. I was scared of streaming, scared of being vulnerable, scared of failing all photos on a live stream and everyone would see it. So I did the only thing I can think of to put all these little petty fears into perspective. I did something that actually scares me. I submitted the All Photos run to a speedrunning marathon, the really, really long-a-thon. And when the schedule came out, my name was right there at the top. Odd Tom has promised that he will show up and he will complete an All Photos run. Was I confident I could do it? Not at all. Was the run marathon safe? Absolutely not. In fact, none of us had finished an All Photos attempt in 8 months, and there was a very real chance that I was about to fail in front of thousands of people. I did a practice run the night before to shake off all the rust, and about halfway through, everything was going so well that I wished it was in front of a crowd.
I am on level 4. Did you see that? Are you watching this right now?
Yeah, this is insane.
Did you see me just dig this berry up?
Until about Winter 2, when I made 2 huge mistakes, one after the other.
Wait a second.
Oh no, you didn't enter the dog.
No, I didn't enter the dog.
That's fine, I think that's like... You can just get the party photo, and then... just sleep and whistle him. It would only lose like...
I believe I did that.
10 minutes, I think. It's not that big of a deal.
Oh my goodness. Alright.
You can still get a really solid time.
Oh my goodness. You know what else I didn't do?
Oh, you didn't buy the lumber.
It was one last reminder of just what I'd gotten myself into, but there was no turning back now. The All Photos entry into the really, really long-a-thon almost died before it ever even started. The first hurdle was convincing the staff that I could actually do it, since I didn't have any runs on the default SRC leaderboard. Yes, it's there. Yes, it's hidden by default. No, it's not hidden because I cheated or because it's invalid. Okay, it's a little invalid, but only because it's an emulator run. I can do this, you gotta trust me. And either I gave a really good speech or they were desperate because they did trust me, but they also let me know that they had some filler runs on standby if mine failed. But this run started having issues before the game even started. Now, I'd set all of this up well beforehand because it's a total headache, but when we did go live, Demo's voice audio was breaking up pretty bad, and it was something happening between Discord and the audio output.
Quick mic check.
I didn't want to mess with a convoluted audio output circuitry, but the alternative was Demo sounding like a drive-thru McDonald's speaker.
Alright, I think it may be because I'm pulling from Discord. Give me a second, I'm gonna see if I can do it direct.
If the multi-output device doesn't like Discord, we'll just cut out the middleman. Mute this, move this over here, sound like I know what I'm talking about. Wait, that actually worked? I'm not entirely sure how, but I wanted to get the thing started before I broke anything else.
3, 2, 1, go.
It was a huge relief because I felt like I had almost killed this thing before it even started. And we made it about 5 seconds before we ran into our next big problem.
Ooh, Odd Tom, they said you've now muted your on-stream voice.
And I could have just paused the game to take care of it, but it was my first marathon stream, and it wasn't going like I planned, and my nerves were just overpowering logic. So I had one hand operating the controller, stumbling through these in-game menus, and the other one was navigating these MacBook settings, trying to reattach my microphone to the stream. And I got it just in time, and then I tried to play it super cool.
Alright, how's our sound coming through? I'm a bit worried about that now.
I'm waiting for the chat delay. Okay, we have you. They're saying yes.
Excellent. Yeah, I moved a lot of the settings around, so, my bad.
And I am so glad that Demo was there to speak coherently and introduce the game for me because my nerves were so bad that my brain was empty.
So, everybody, welcome. This is Harvest Moon 64 All Photos. This is our longest category, though we could make up some kind of 100% nonsense.
Demo's introduction didn't really register for me because I was too focused on everything I was doing wrong. Why am I doing a full forage on Wednesday, spring the 3rd? This is not part of the plan. I wasn't supposed to do any of this until Thursday the 4th. And now the NPC locations are scrambled, my gift count is wrong, my rhythm's off, and on the inside I'm freaking out because I can see all these things I'm doing wrong and the whole world is watching and I can't just give up and start over. So I kept going. And you know what happened? Nothing. Nobody even noticed that I gave Ellie a flower during her introduction, and nobody cared. The only person freaking out here was me. And probably also Demo. While I was over here having my little panic attack, he was taking on the entire chat by himself.
So as we go through, I will try to talk about it. And if you guys want to ask any questions in chat, just at Demo Plays Games, and I'll try to answer.
And his voice was just so calm and reassuring, and it has a way of just dissolving panic. And by the time we were doing our best girl routine, the nerves had calmed down and I was back in the groove of things.
Do you get a marriage photo? Yes, you do. So are we not marrying best girl Karen? We are.
Absolutely, we are marrying Karen.
Anne is best girl. Yeah, this chat's gonna be
Here
fun.
we go. Here we go.
One thing that Demo and I didn't discuss was a strategy for how to keep the conversation going, mostly because we didn't realize it might even be a problem. And in those first couple of minutes, it really showed.
Oh my goodness, I had a fish on the first millisecond. If I'd pulled a Cipher, I would have had a fish.
My stream is pretty delayed, so I cannot.
Fair enough.
Congratulations on your fish, but I haven't seen it yet.
That's okay. You will see it soon.
But we fell into this flow where he would ask me something, and then I would end the answer by leading him into the next topic, or cluing him in on what I was planning to do next.
Oh, you're still looking for the large.
Yeah, I haven't fished a large yet. I fished precisely one medium, but fishing is terribly difficult in this game.
Fishing is one of those things where it looks a lot easier than it actually is. The fish biting can last a few frames, or quarter of a second, half a second.
But we were at our best when we were sharing war stories, bouncing back and forth with memories of old runs, or poking fun at mistakes that all of us made at some point.
Good job checking the weather, and also watering the television.
The N64 controller, it's not easy.
No, trust me, I know. I've milked that TV so many times. It's actually a lot worse with the milker, because that animation takes so long and the sound is so obnoxious. I'm very, very excited for you to mess around with the cows later.
Oh, yes, yeah.
We were just being ourselves, keeping each other company through the same old day-to-day grind that the All Photos run truly is. And we had the overnight slot, so we expected to be something that people fell asleep to. But a couple hours in, people were getting more interested, asking about the details of certain photos or why we were doing things a certain way.
I'm loving everyone's reaction. I just read that list and it is crazy, yep. It certainly is. Yeah, everyone is in agreement that the 80% of your field as grass is just like a totally random thing.
Some went off to do research and came back with even more questions. And we got to talk about the history of all photos and how we found these requirements through data mining or trial and error. And some even checked the speedrun.com leaderboard and noticed that Demo was up there, but not Odd Tom. Should they be concerned that the person currently running the game doesn't actually have a completed run on the SRC leaderboard?
Tom does have a time for this category. He's done a few runs on emulator, and he has recently switched over to the actual console.
And I think it was the first time Demo really got a taste of what the emulator runners were actually going through. And I'm glad he was there, because one of the challenges I wasn't prepared for, something I had no experience with, was how to keep up with hundreds of viewers in a chat. In the last hour, this chat had gone from a trickle to constantly scrolling, and keeping up with it was a full-time job.
I need to be watching the chat on one, and I need to be watching your stream on the other, because I'm a little behind the times to explain the
Yeah, I'm trying to watch chat, and it's actually a lot harder than I'd given it credit for.
I jumped in to help every once in a while, but about 2 hours in, I was plenty busy with my own full-time job of keeping this run alive. There's a lot of ways to kill an All Photos run, but they fall into two basic categories. Sometimes it's a single event that blocks the route to the photo. Rain on the photo day, sleeping through a festival, forgetting to enter into a race, and you usually know it immediately after you do it. And sometimes it's a bunch of little mistakes that don't mean a lot on their own, but together they add up to something that's deadly. And you don't think too much about it until you've fallen so far behind that when you stop and actually do the math, you realize there aren't enough in-game days to catch up before the deadline.
Let's say she was at 159, the best possible. Then an egg and a music box would be 170. Then we could do her dream event, and she'd still be like under 180. Like we couldn't even do her ankle event.
And these are a lot harder to catch because it happens so gradually that usually you think you're doing great until you expect an event to happen and it doesn't. By that point, it's too late. Going into summer year one, while Demo and I were bantering at each other and talking to chat, neither of us noticed how far Cliff was falling behind. And if Cliff didn't have at least 50 affection points by winter, he was going to leave. In this game, NPCs have an affection value that will increase by talking or giving a gift, but you can only do it once per day. Cliff gets 10 points if you talk and give him an egg, but for one reason or another, it just wasn't happening. One day, I'd decide I wanted to give the egg to Ellie, and I'd give Cliff a different gift instead. On another day, he just wouldn't show up at all. There was one time that I meant to give him an egg, but my finger slipped and I ended up giving him an edible herb instead. And each of these things isn't so bad on their own, but together they were starting to add up to something problematic. There's no direct way to see an NPC's affection points, but you can estimate based on cutscenes that trigger the first time it reaches a certain value. And the first big clue that something was wrong was when I got a cutscene for Cliff in the second week of summer that I usually got mid-spring.
Oh, alright, so there's a Cliff's event.
I didn't know the exact value of this cutscene, so I just tossed out a number and hoped someone would correct me.
Now that's what, 40 when he's
For all photos, it wasn't rude to correct the streamer because none of us had memorized everything. Phone a friend was one of our lifelines.
I'm not sure. Did we decide on 35 or 40? I'm sure Desert's gonna chime in. I'm pretty sure it's 35.
So I'm sitting up in my seat now in gamer mode because I'm about done with gift runs, and I had just learned that Cliff was between 30 and 40 affection, and I thought he had to be at 100 before winter.
He has to be at 100 by the 1st of winter or he will pack up and leave the game.
And you can tell the gears in my brain were chugging full throttle to solve this problem, because the next day I checked 2 different TV channels before I left the house.
Yeah, you gotta check that sports channel. It's really important.
I still had fresh memories of the run that failed when Jeff didn't show up at the party, and if this run was going to fail, it was not going to be for shorting a party member. It might, however, be for missing Maria's photo. When Maria reaches 200 affection, she stops by the farm at 5 p.m. for her photo, and I'd been manually tracking her affection from the start, every gift and talk for the last 2 hours.
It'll be close. I think she's in the high 150s.
But when it came time for her to show up, she didn't.
Maria's not here.
Maybe she wasn't high enough?
Yeah.
And usually when this happens, it just means you miscounted by a day. No problem. The next day, I gave Maria another music box and waited to 5 p.m. But still no Maria. And neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew the most common reason a girl doesn't show up is because you accidentally cleared the event.
Check this out. Maria is at a pink heart today. And that should mean she's at a 510... 15, 20, 204, which is well above the requirement for a photo. And this is the middle of summer, so if she doesn't show up tonight, that means we did something terribly wrong somewhere.
We missed it, yeah.
Yeah, which means we'll have to reload that old file. So if she does not show up tonight, this suddenly stops being a world record pace run. And we'll have to reload that old split we made at the very beginning.
However, we do have a safety split. Or a safety file, so... I mean, we lose a bunch of time, but I have full confidence she'll show up.
There we go. Not to cause panic among everybody here.
Oh god, I thought you were going to continue to hit rocks for a second there.
No, not today.
And it was such a relief to be done with that one because it was the last big deadline before the next season.
God, see, isn't this category so easy?
You only have to remember every single thing, and then try to diagnose what is wrong when something doesn't go as expected.
I picked up one more photo at the Sea Festival, and the pace was looking good.
So Anna's green. Very nice. For the end of summer.
Yeah, this is shaping up.
Pace can be a little misleading for all photos because our splits are based on season, but what really matters is the NPC's affection. If you sleep through more days than usual, it'll look like you're ahead when you actually have a lot more gifting days ahead of you. Cliff was still a little behind going into fall, but everyone else is where they needed to be. And I didn't want to say it yet because I didn't want to jinx it, but I was also starting to believe. The difference between me and chat is that I knew what was coming up next season, that autumn is a minefield of run killers, and whether or not we stayed on this world record pace would be up to random numbers completely out of my control. The very first thing I did going into fall was to create a backup save, so I wouldn't have to go back too far if anything went wrong. For this category, spring and summer are relatively flexible, but fall is the first time that the path narrows, and there's several things on a road that you have to do in a certain order, and there's very little wiggle room for error. And even if you do everything right, if you happen to get rain on the wrong day, you have to start over and do the whole sequence all over again. But when you hear that fall music, you have to make a conscious effort to break out of that rut, because one little mistake at this point can cost you the whole run.
But I mean, that's what happened when I lost it a couple days ago. I started glossing over, not paying attention. That's how you crash and burn. Because this game, you have to pay attention to the very end.
For instance, if you need an egg to restore the vineyard, it's very easy to give that egg to Ellie since you've been doing that same thing for the last 3 hours. And your brain does it without even being told to do it. But if you do that, and you don't have any corn or a spare egg, you can't restore the vineyard, which is a requirement for Karen's photo. That's not to say I didn't make any mistakes those first few days. I just happened to catch the most important ones.
Alright, so today is one of those special days, fall the 5th. Tomorrow we will be getting a photo, or not getting a photo. Tomorrow, the weather for the day after tomorrow has to be good, or we will miss the photo.
So the way wishing for weather works is since tomorrow's weather is already fixed, it ensures the day after tomorrow has normal weather. Literally not helpful in any way in a casual run, and is really only helpful for this kind of stuff.
The truth is, we didn't really know what wishing for weather did. We weren't even sure what good weather meant. Is it good when it rains because your crops get watered? Or is sunny better because you can do the photo event? Is the game even smart enough to check for that? Kirby Arm's guide said that wishing for weather prevented typhoons, but it was still one of those game FAQ rumors that none of us knew enough about coding to actually test. Now, I cover everything we do know about it in my All Photos tutorial, but in 2018, we weren't really sure what it did.
I wonder what the actual odds are for wishing for weather and still getting bad weather.
Well, I mean, you can vote on the goddess and still get some random person's goddess.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I've never read anywhere that's checked into that.
Yeah, I'm not entirely certain.
Wishing for weather was more of a ritual to make you feel better, and we were doing everything we could to keep this run marathon safe. We had Maria's photo, and now we had Karen's photo. Next up was Ellie's photo, which you can only get on fall 9th, and you can only get it if it's not raining.
Oh my goodness.
What's wrong?
I wish for weather, and I got rainy day anyway.
To say this isn't a run killer is a bit misleading, because saving locks in the weather, and if you lock in a rainy fall 9th, you can no longer get Ellie's photo.
Sometimes I hate this game.
It's more accurate to say that this has killed so many of our runs that we almost expect rain on fall 9th, and it's a pleasant surprise when it doesn't.
And just like that, the run can be over, but fortunately Odd Tom did not save. If he would have saved, it would have been
that would have been
a very bad thing.
It's actually part of running this game. Like, it's unavoidable. It's not even, I don't even consider it losing time because everyone has to kind of put up with it.
You factor it in.
Yeah.
We were basically repeating everything we just did the last couple days, and it gave us a chance to talk about some other stuff going on in the community.
We have a matchmaking tool assisted for this game. There's just so much to take into consideration. Like, it's tough to do as a human being, and you can't, like, task a game until you understand it fully as a human being.
When someone in chat brought up emulators, it was as good a time as any to talk about it.
Would it?
It's a good time to bring up emulators and this game.
The emulator ruling was still a hot topic, but if there was anyone out there thinking about running this game, they deserve to know about it before they sink a whole bunch of time or money into it.
Oh, sure. One thing we found out about this game is that no matter what settings we use, emulator just loads each screen faster.
Like, to the point that it made a difference in the leaderboards.
Correct.
Where if you, like, played it perfectly, the emulator would get a better time. And that's what created the problem.
A lot of strong feelings were starting to float up to the surface, and it kind of surprised me because I thought I moved on from this a long time ago. But there was some part of me that was still very much angry at something, and I didn't really understand why.
Even mine were exclusively emulator runs because that's what I had access to. And then suddenly all of those become, well, null and void.
Demo cut me off before I could go too far off the rails of the depression train.
If you go to the All Photos speedruns leaderboard, you can show emulated speedruns and you'll see Tom's runs.
And it gave me enough time to step back, take a deep breath, and before I relapsed, I latched onto literally anything else to change the subject.
Oh, it's going to be the cliff scene, isn't it? No, it's the dream event. This is a good thing.
But it turned out we didn't have to come up with something, because while we were waiting for Ellie's photo, something happened that none of us had ever seen before.
Whoa, okay. I just warped for a reason that I'm not aware of. I don't know what to say about that.
Well, I mean, it saved you time walking to Ellie.
It did. I just have no idea why that happened.
Why did that happen?
We'd have to look at it later, because right now we had all photos to finish, and we could not afford to get distracted.
Now we are up to, what is the count? 6 photos. Gramps photo, Maria, Karen, Ellie, swimming. So we're at 5.
Well, we're almost halfway.
It was rounding midnight real time, and we were both starting to feel it. And to top it all off, coming up next was the Harvest Festival, the great equalizer, where PB runs come to die. You have to pull a coin out of the cake to get the balloon photo, and there's nothing you could do to pad the odds. You have a 1 in 10 chance, and if you don't get it, all you can do is reset and hope you get it next time.
Okay, so I don't know if you're ready for this, but I am about to win the festival the first time. Right here is where I'm going to win it. Right here. Very first time. I'm going to get the coin in the cake very first time.
So sometimes you get it on your first attempt, and sometimes you get it on your 15th attempt.
Cypher holds the record. 11, I think.
Ooh, 11 is pretty bad.
11 is abysmal.
Are we keeping count, guys? That's 1.
Are we going to rub it in my face? Is that what we're going to do?
No, I just want to keep count. You could have 2 new records tonight.
Scary part was, I knew he was right, and that was not a record I wanted to break tonight. The 2018 Really Really Long-a-thon went on for so long into the night that I actually fell asleep during the evaluation sequence.
I lost count.
Oh, I wasn't even counting.
That would have to wait because it wasn't quite over yet.
Oh, we're at the girls. When do Rick and Cliff and the mayor come in?
They don't. They didn't make it.
The party was one person
We
short.
missed Rick and... Wait, hang on. I saw Rick and the mayor. I didn't see Cliff.
Yeah, it's just Cliff.
And out of everything, this is my favorite part of this run, because Demo and I kind of forget that we're streaming to the world, and we put all our focus into how to solve this problem.
So do you have any eggs? How far back can you go?
No, he's at like 150 at least. Oh, whoopsies. I picked the wrong file.
Did we fail? The answer is technically yes.
No. We're going back in time. We are getting in our convenient little time machine.
We definitely had the viewers in a panic as we went off script improvising to cover these miscounted variables. But to us, the problem was obvious. Not so much how to fix it, because who's memorized Cliff's schedule?
His schedule is so funky. Like, it's just too early. We're gonna go off the stream, come back, and he's gonna be there.
But that's the best part of speedrunning. The kind of thing you only see in marathon runs. When things go wrong and you can't just reset and start over. We gotta use our knowledge of the game and some critical thinking to make it work. And the second time around, we got it right. Well, the pictures were in the mailbox, but then we got it right.
Oh, you didn't check the mailbox at all?
Well, I checked it in my other file, and then I reset it, and I didn't check it. Although I could have scared all of you by looking at the album and be like, why aren't there any photos in here? I didn't get a single photo, but I didn't do that to you.
I just wanted this thing to finally be over.
Please, God.
All right. That's it.
Even with all the stumbles, all the nervous jitters, when I turned the last page of that photo album, we were still about 2 hours ahead of the estimate. I'd never expected to get to the top of the All Photos leaderboard, so this was a redemption for me, because this was more or less the time I would have gotten in that first emulator run if I'd known that extensions weren't chickens inside, but we don't have to talk about that. Now, we all knew there was time to save. I'd made so many mistakes on that run, but none of us knew exactly how much time there was to save, and we all wanted to find out. So just as Demo and I had done nearly a year before, the three of us made a gentleman's agreement. Demo, Desert, and I worked out a time when we could all play together, and on December 29th, 2018, all three of us started a new file at the same time. Now, my game crashed within the first few minutes, if that tells you anything about how my run went, but I still beat that marathon time by about 20 minutes. I don't know how Demo did, because the great Twitch deletion wiped out a lot of those old All Photos runs. But Desert had a few more tricks up his sleeve, because his run was not only the first to use the GOT spam, but it was also the first All Photos run to break the 7-hour mark, with only 3.5 minutes to spare.
There it is! Oh my god, that was stressful. Yes.
And with all the new interest in All Photos that winter, we had to create a separate channel just to keep from flooding the general chat with All Photos strategy talk. And we already had a separate channel from all those emulator discussions, and it was repurposed and renamed to the All Photos Alumni. By January, I was on the midnight shift, so I missed a lot of these early strategy discussions, but you could usually tell when something big went down the day before based on the number of Discord notifications. Now that month, Demo was on a mission to find a route that was safe for marathons, moving Maria's photo to year 2 and picking up the GOT spam. What he found instead was an oversight in the way the sprites were coded, and what would eventually become the sprite spam. Now he couldn't quite figure out how to keep man as cows, but he did post the idea in Discord in case anyone had any suggestions, and it turns out somebody did. Just give me a couple hours, Crazy Corn Dog says. And true to her word, a few hours later, we had a new way to get 3 cows for free. And come Valentine's Day, we had a whole new list of time-saving strategies. But we were all struggling to actually do a run, because routing is easy. Actually doing the route is a totally different beast. So this time, the Marathon All Photos race was more about holding each other accountable than it was about actually racing. We'll call it a race for the viewers, but we all know it's the random numbers that decide our fate. So for this race, our goal was just to finish it, regardless of time. And we knew the temptation would be there to throw in the towel early if it looked kinda sorta like we weren't gonna win. So part of the agreement for participation was that anyone who forfeit, for any reason, would have to do an 80% run, some point after the race was over. Also known as Sad Dad percent, the goal of an 80% run is to go straight to sleep every single day for 2 years until your dad shows up and tells you how disappointed he is. It takes about 45 grueling, repetitive minutes. But this way, finishing last was still preferable to not finishing at all. So my 80% time is 36:34. In the spring of 2019, my goal for the year was to one-up my past self, one category at a time. So emulator runs no longer appeared on the leaderboard, but neither did obsolete runs, which meant that my console runs would only appear on the leaderboard if the time was better than my previous emulator submissions. On May 23, 2019, I streamed a Karen marriage run as part of this series to beat my past self.
So that's 1 down. 6 or 7 to go. But you know, I'm gonna have to do this in my photos run as well. So my photos run is emulator too.
And then, without notice, without letting anyone in the community know what was going on, my account went dark. I came back in August with a renewed vigor, a blinding yellow jacket, and is that your house? And after 7 years, I'm finally getting around to telling you the whole story. I left Hartford in the spring of 2019, taking only what I could fit into my little VW Beetle. And I won't talk about that decision too much, except to say that sometimes the right decision is one of the hardest you can make. So I started a new game file on a farm in Sequatchie County, Tennessee, and this would be my home for as long as I needed it to be. Now, starting over is nothing new for me, but this new game file had a lot of rules that I had to learn really quickly. But it also taught me a lot of gratitude for things I never realized weren't universal. Clean water, running water, for instance, because whatever's down in that tank is not safe to drink. Air conditioning, because a stand-up fan is not sufficient for a Tennessee summer, and even the weak ones are not cheap. And the first time I ran the microwave while the AC was blowing, I learned about wattage limits, and how circuit breakers keep dummies like me from burning our own house down.
How much power do we have to play with?
Barely enough to run this coffee pot for 9 hours. Go!
But I also learned that the shady spots are the best place to find 4-leaf clovers. I learned how many bugs and plants are actually out there, and I learned just how many stars there really are. So what does any of this have to do with Harvest Moon? Well, I do think it's kind of interesting how I went from taking care of animals in a video game to doing it in real life, but there is a point to it. I think it's important to stop and take a break every once in a while when it's needed. But it's just as important not to get too comfy and to start moving again when you're all rested up. And somewhere around mid-July, I dug up an old friend out of storage. I could run it on the camper TV, but I was a long way from streaming again because the camper didn't have internet. I spent that entire summer serving free Wi-Fi zones, but for the most part, I was completely off the grid. I tried to set an Ethernet landline in the early days, but it turns out the longer the cable is, the less effective it becomes, and might slip chewing on the plastic coating, so that plan was never going to work out anyway. My camper was in cell phone range, thank Athena, but I had to ration cell phone data, and there was something else going on that summer that took priority over all other internet usage. But that's a story for another time. Point is, I don't think I used Twitch at all that summer, unless I happened to be at a cafe with free Wi-Fi when someone was running all photos. But even then, it was just jumping in to say hi, so I have no idea how many streams I actually missed. Occasionally demo where I would tease an all photos stream, but neither of us actually stepped up to do it. That credit goes to somebody else.
Alright, here we go.
Have you ever thought you were really good at something, and then someone just kind of steps in and really just puts you in your place? At about 3 a.m. on August 25th, he posted a picture of his console and a brand new Japanese cartridge, and then the lessons started coming in. Across September, Crazy Corn Dog gave him a good fight in all recipes, not that the rest of us could keep up. And about the same time Sam finished the first sub 2-hour all recipe run, I submitted all photos to the really longathon. The year before, I'd submitted it to set a deadline for learning a reliable route. This time around, I was setting a deadline for getting a reliable streaming setup, whatever it took. Now, something I learned from Sam that summer is that sometimes the best way to inspire others is to step up and do the thing yourself. And while the rest of us talked strategy and what we would do better in our next All Photos run, Sam was actually doing All Photos runs. By the time Snow reached Tennessee, the Sam streams were pretty common, and I know this because I finally got internet set up. Not in my camper, but in this building right here. I was part of the manual labor force, helping move these giant tables and sewing machines, and all I really wanted was to set up my laptop in the break area, because I didn't have internet at home, and I'm making these tutorial videos for a niche group, and talk about Southern hospitality. He just said, I have no idea what you're doing, but whatever it is, I support it. And just like that, I secured a reliable streaming setup. And it was just in time too, because Sam was making his way up the All Photos leaderboard much faster than anyone else ever had. Now, when I started learning All Photos, it took me about 2 months of attempts before I even got a completion. First time I saw Sam streaming All Photos was on November 13th. His first completion came a week later. Going into December, he was kicking at the heels of my personal best. A week after that, he was 10 minutes off world record pace, and a few days later, he would set the world record pace. Sam went from rookie mistake to top of the leaderboard in less time and fewer runs than it took me to even get my first completion. It was like we'd all been fighting against this giant monster, and then Sam just steps in, bops it on the head like, at what point does it start to get challenging? I had one more big lesson to learn that winter. Something to always keep in mind whenever you move to a new state, that different states have different labor laws. Now, I'm going to skip the details on this one because that's not what this video is about, but basically I signed a contract for a 40-hour work week, and I was given a mandatory 60-hour work week. Now I was walking the distance from Philadelphia to New York every week, just grateful I didn't sign up for the 12-hour shifts. So I didn't have the days off I thought I would, but it actually all worked out kind of well. Since Sam was on such a hot streak, I gave him my really longathon slot, and he knocked it out of the park. And it worked out for me because I had a specific goal, a specific number I was working toward that winter, and it's the only thing that kept me going. But with all that overtime pay, I passed the goal about a week before Christmas, and I cannot express the amount of joy I felt walking out of that building for the last time, or telling the guys that, yeah, I can totally join y'all for a Christmas All Photos race. And out of all of the Christmas All Photos races we've done, this one was my favorite. Not because I did particularly well, I think on some level we all knew Sam was going to clean us out, but because I felt like I'd put in the work to earn this. And still, only half of us were able to finish it. I miscounted Maria's affection, flooded the cow steal, and didn't make enough money in the mines to cover it. And Desert got to showcase how brutally unforgiving this run is, by triggering the SIG event on the only day, the only festival where you can buy the lumber you need for the house extensions. I did one more run before the new year, and this time I was prepared for how cold that building gets when the heater isn't running. There were limits to what I was allowed to do there, and this time around I forgot to buy a staircase. Technically, all 4 of us forgot, but that's how it goes sometimes. As the new year rolled around, it was time for me to move on. There were 2 things that I knew I wanted. One was a dispatch certificate, and the other was waiting for me in Jacksonville.
And then I got a wife.
We'll get there.